Hello there, my name is Renae DeLiz, and today I'll just be drawing the character of the princess from the comic book adaptation of The Light Princess, which Cave Pictures Publishing put out. I did the pencils, my husband Ray Dillon did the inks, colors, and letters, and the wonderful Meredith Finch did the adaptation. And it was just a really great, fun, positive project, and everyone involved was wonderful. And I'm just really happy to, try to do this how-to today. I say try to do the how-to because I've never actually done one. So I'm just going to draw it and just kind of describe what's going through my head and the various methods that I use as I go along, and hope that isn't just a bunch of gibberish. So, but the biggest and best advice that I could give any artist is that you want to create your own unique style. So therefore, when it comes to things like rules or seeing how other artists do things, rules meaning like, how to draw this or where to place that on a body, or how to draw, a cow. You must draw a cow this way. You don't have to draw anything any certain way, really. So, and the best thing you can do for yourself is to create your own personal style, because then you'll have elements that no one else really has. It'll make it stand out, and it'll just help your career in many ways. My style, I I guess I kind of picked up a pencil as a young girl, 5, I guess I can remember, and this is the result. I didn't have any kind of tutorial or book or college art training or anything like that. I kind of just went with what I felt like looked good, and I saw various art styles that I saw looked at for art inspiration. Some of the rules that I've learned over the years seemed really helpful, and I applied those. Like or just perspective rules, especially, were very helpful. But yeah, just take any kind of rule or how to with a grain of salt, because in the end, you're going to want to interpret the world around you in your own unique, special way, and that's the best thing you can do for yourself. So yeah, if you see something helpful, great, but if you don't, just keep on learning the way that you know how. Anyway, I'm on the iPad Pro, and it's pretty important to lighten up the sketch lines in what I'm doing. So obviously, if you're working digitally, it's a lot easier to do, because then you can just lighten up the opacity on a layer. But if you're on pencil and paper, don't be distraught, because I worked with pencil and paper for the first 15 years. The Legend of Wonder Woman, I did just pencil and Bristol, the DC art boards. And to lighten my sketch lines, I used this guy, which is a drafting pad. I believe it's usually used for architecture. But it's just a few bucks. You can find it on Amazon or at Hobby Lobby or any craft stores usually. You just kind of rub that over your sketch lines. It'll lighten it right up, and it'll be ready for the next layer of construction for your artwork. And in general, I'll do 3 to 4, layers of sketch lines and construction before I get to the final, lines that I'll be putting down for the final artwork. So, I mean, you'll figure out how many layers you might need as your own particular artist, but that's how many I need. Anyway, moving on. I'm just going to start drawing, and right now I'm just going to start with a bust shot of the character before I move on to the dress, because I feel like there's just enough already to talk about when it comes to faces. So anyway, obviously when you start with a face, a lot of people might draw a circle. That really helps too, but I usually do an oval. I cut it in half, basically, to show about where the eyes will be. And remember, this is just your sketch lines. You don't need it to look perfect or anything. This is just to give you the idea of what, is to come. And you're going to be, every single layer of construction art that you make, it's going to be a little bit more refined and a little bit more refined, and then the final one, it'll just be ready to go. So anyway, the eyes will be about there, and she's just going to be standing there. Nothing fancy today. Just doing a face. I'm going to start my first how-to with something simple and hope that that comes out okay. So just standing there smiling. And in fact, I find the simpler things to draw are the hardest. So maybe I just kind of shot myself in the foot here, but I'll keep going. Just generally doing the face shape. She's fairly young, so I try to make all the corners and edges fairly round. And then the ears, or I was going to say the mouth right here. If you want an idea of where the mouth should go on a face, if you see where the jawbone is, where your chin starts to bend right there, right here. That's usually about the same line as where the mouth goes, just to help out. Okay, so moving on. She's going to stand there. I usually, this next line I do, if I was drawing a full body, here, I'll do it up here. I'll just show you. If you're drawing somebody even just standing straight, and the line that I technically use to kind of give me an idea where the spine is, you don't want it to be straight, even if you're drawing somebody standing. Because that's not how the body is. So like what you want to do is always have some kind of movement to it. And she's standing straight. So because of that, it's going to be kind of bowed outwards. If she was to be a sloucher, if the character was to slouch, you would draw it kind of this way. You can kind of see already that that gives you an idea of the way the character is standing. But anyway, getting too technical already, so erase that. Go right into this. So I drew it just slightly bowed out. If you could see the full body, it would be even more so. Shoulders. And then since it's female, they have a more of a shape to their body. Males, you kind of usually go with like a rectangle. But for a female, I always draw circles for that, for the shoulders. And arms, I just kind of signify where the bones will be. You know, elbows would be about right there. Elbows are usually kind of where the waist is at its smallest, or a little lower. Ears, usually between the eye and the nose. And then hair. Hairline is something that I feel like a lot of artists don't learn for some reason. It's just something that is, I think a lot of artists just don't think of as very important, but it really, really is. So if you should learn some hairlines, and actually fashion magazines are a fantastic way to do that, because you see different ways, different types of hairstyles, and different types of people and how that their hairline affects them. So yeah, that's kind of where I learned a lot of that in my old fashion magazines as a teenager. So her hair is fairly long. Let me double check that. Yeah, so her hair is really long, just slightly wavy, somewhat wild. In medieval times, the edges of her hair wouldn't be too cut straight. Their hair just kind of grows naturally. So you don't have to have straight edges at the bottom of her hair, if you know what I mean. So this part of her hair, her part is here. You always need to find the part in the hair to give you an idea of where the hair is going to fall. Since her part is over to the side. And then you just kind of drape the hair downwards. I'm going to add a little breeze just to make it a little bit more interesting. That way you can kind of have more fun with the curls. I love drawing hair, and I could probably do a whole tutorial just on drawing hair, and I would attempt to tell you how I do it, but hair and fabric, some of my favorite things to draw, because it's just a really fun way to show emotion or mood or energy of the piece that you're doing. It could be action, or it's just wonderful. I actually have the hardest time drawing characters like Spider-Man, because there's just, one, there's no real face. He just kind of has a mask, and there's no fabric floating around. It's just pure structure. So I can draw them, but I have more fun with characters that have hair or fabric on them. Okay, so now I'm just gonna quickly draw the outer edges. Like there's where her shoulders would be, there's where the arms would be and such. That's where her chest would be. Let me just fill it out a little bit more. Okay, so once we get that scribbly stuff done, and remember, it's just scribbles. Don't judge it too much. Don't judge your own thing too harshly too much. I mean, you're just kind of putting out your own intuitive sketch. So the next layer, I'm going to lighten up those sketch lines and just go right on to the next one. And so you can get into more detail. So I'm going to draw like where the eyes will go. And everybody has their own style for how they do eyes and noses and stuff. Me, I would say that my art style probably came from, I started really getting into manga as a teenager. Manga is fantastic for things like movement and emotion and pacing, just a lot of good things. And then American comics were really good at other things, and I really liked both. And so I guess what I tried to do was I took my manga style, which I had, kind of as a teenager, and I started to apply some of the rules and ideas that were in traditional American comics, like Marvel, DC, kind of have a more structured, realistic look to most of the art that they do. So that's kind of what I did. I tried to do a nice in between, and I think that's why people have a hard time placing what my art looks like. I've heard people say it looks like Disney, and I've seen people say it looks like manga, and I've seen people say it looks like, animation, and it honestly, it's just from everywhere. It's from everything. That's where it came from. So, like I said, she's fairly young, so you want to make sure that the lines of the face around it are very smooth. And see, I'm just improving on the sketch lines below it. You don't have to follow them perfectly. Adjust if needed. I have a really hard time with eyeballs. I keep making them crooked, so I try to keep on watch with that. Same with faces. Every artist has their thing and their difficulties. Mine are drawing big heads. Sometimes I draw really, really big heads, and that's okay. But I try to keep on watch for it. And sometimes I'll draw a whole book and realize, oh no, the eyeballs are just completely crooked throughout the whole thing. So I kind of keep on watch for things. You just learn as you go. But as you can see, I'm just kind of giving more definition and more depth to what I'm doing. And it's very odd trying to talk while I do this. It's always just pure silence when I draw. I work at home with my kids. I have 4 children whom I homeschool. So I completely understand, parents right now really needing, really be helpful to have something to do with their kids or share with their kids like this how-to. But I work around my kids all the time, and they're always there, helping, giving me input and whatnot on it. But it's just always chaos around me, basically. So I've kind of learned to draw with a lot of chaos happening around me. I could probably draw during an apocalypse and still draw a comic book. But anyway, just kind of draw the arms. Whoops. And now to put on the, oops, I forgot the other hair. Oh yeah, and we're doing a nice breeze. I forgot about that. And see, we're just kind of rustling the hair a little bit this way. Nothing fancy. But even just a little movement adds so much. I love adding movement to everything if I can. Okay, so the dress, which I love. I love doing dresses. Puff sleeves. Because who doesn't like a nice puff sleeve for your medieval gown, right? Corset top. We'll do the corset. I believe I drew a lot of corsets for this book. Okay, and from there you can kind of fine tune it, but this is my second layer. And you can see that well, maybe I should give her some eyes, some eyeballs. Kind of need those. Alright, so I'm going to lighten that one up too and get rid of the bottom layer. As you can see, it's completely different how much is added. There was the first one, there's the second one. So now I'm just going to do it again. And I don't know if I'll need to do another layer or not. Hopefully I can get this one done in just one line, or one more layer. So I'll give that a try. Eyelashes on top. You'll have to excuse me if I spin the canvas. I did that with paper as well. Just makes the angle of what you're trying to do just that much easier. Okay. The eyebrows are actually, I would say, arguably the most important part of the face, namely because just the slightest movement and positioning of the eyebrows will completely change the expression and tone of your character. If there's something off about your character's expression, I would check the eyebrows first. I mean, obviously the mouth and the eyes play an important role, but the eyebrows, I feel like, are the most powerful one. So I need to put this on lighter here so you can see what I'm doing. And if you're using pencils, there's no real rule of what kind of pencil. Use a number 2 pencil if you want. I kind of suffered through a lot of artists telling me that I needed to have this pencil or that pencil or this gear and that gear, and like those might help if that's what you need. But I just, my whole career I've drawn with a mechanical pencil that cost $3. I just found one that I liked. I think it was like the Pentel Quicker Clicker, because when the lead ran out, the side click on it made it way faster and easier and efficient to get more lead. You didn't have to push the top, so I could erase without affecting anything. So eyes are a little tough to do because it's very easy to make it feel like they're too wide open, like here. So if you want to change that, and that's why you tend to draw some lines above the eye, like this. It'll kind of make her look and feel like, she's not. Okay, well, those eyes are pretty dopey. I'm a little distracted. Anyway, I'll fix up the eyes. But yeah, so there's more to the eyes than just the lash line and the bottom line. Like there's top lines, there's kind of, I usually put some little details for the inner corners of the eye here. I'd like to indicate the bridge of the nose, such as this. The nostrils and the nose. I always start with the nostrils when I do the nose, just because it helps guide everything else. So she has a pretty small petite nose. She's a pretty traditional princess, And the mouth. Just a normal mouth. There's a million different ways you can draw lips. I tend to not draw all the lips, all the lines around the lips, because then it makes it look, I don't know. I always just liked it when you just draw some of it to indicate it. I felt like if you draw the line all the way around, it tends to make it look like they're wearing lipstick, and I think it looks best in colors, just to put the color in there. So that's all I'll usually do for lips. And then I usually put in cheekbones, but again, she's a very young character, so you want to be careful with the cheekbones. If you do too long of it, like if I, added more cheekbones, it would add to her age and make her look more mature, but she's not very mature, as you will see if you read the story as well. Let me get this right. Like I said, one of the things I always did wrong was create, lopsided faces. So got to be careful of that. But don't feel bad if there's something that you need to work on. You're always going to need to work on something. You're never going to be done learning how to do anything as an artist. Okay, so now I'm just filling everything in, just adding more detail. And again, like I'm keeping in mind like where the breeze is going, and like if the breeze is kind of blowing this way, just gently, that means that her hair would be in the traditional down, as it would look down, but you're just kind of subtly moving some of the less heavy strands over to the left, if that makes sense. Okay, I'll have to go back to the hair because I get really involved with the hair. I can do it for days. And it's funny because that's one of the things that my husband has a hard time with. He's also a very, very good artist himself, when he's not inking and coloring my stuff. And hair, for some reason, because of the ways that we each learned to draw, he learned more technically. He had the books and everything like that, so he knew all the rules of the traditional rules of making comics. But hair was one of the things that he struggles with even still, and I've tried to show him, and it's just really hard to describe. Same with flowy gowns. That can be difficult too. Maybe sometime I'll do a how-to for that. Yeah, good enough. It's not perfect, but I'll fix it up later. And the neck. And see, I'm trying to make my final lines this time. I think if this was an actual book that I was doing, I would do one more layer of, drawing before I finished it. But I know this isn't like perfect inking, so I'm going to try to lighten up a little bit. I tend to be quite a perfectionist when it comes to my art. My 10-year-old son Drake he also loves to draw, and we both kind of struggle with the same issues of we get very frustrated when we cannot get something right. There are just some days when you cannot draw anything, much less, not even a circle sometimes. You just cannot do it. And so we both struggle sometimes with feeling frustrated that we cannot be the artist we want to be. And if you are one of those, don't worry. It's just part of being an artist. If you're frustrated, that's actually a good sign, because that means you know that something is off or wrong, and you've identified it, and eventually you're going to work out what that is and become a better artist in the end. So that's what I tell him. It's just, getting frustrated as any kind of creator, basically, I think is just goes hand in hand with becoming really great at what you do. Okay, so drawing in the dress. Ooh, my lines are all over the place today, but whatever. We're gonna get this done. So yeah, if it was a comic, I would probably try very hard to make my ink lines smoother. Inking is a whole nother thing. Inking, generally in traditional comics, there's somebody who pencils, that just provides pencils, which tend to be pretty sketchy, which might look actually a lot like what I'm doing now. This would kind of be like a good pencil, but if you're inking it, you want it to look a lot smoother. So anyway, puff sleeves. And I usually save like the details, such as things like lace or designs, for the very end. Like, you still want to get the foundation right. So put our arms there. Okay, I'm going to do the corset. And maybe next time, if I do another one, I'll have to do a full body. And then maybe I'm going to give her some lace there soon. But for now, I'm just doing this. Okay, so, can't forget the collarbone. And again, this is another place that you have to be careful of when you want to indicate youth. When you have like an older, especially if they're a skinnier character, there tends to be more lines like this, I don't really put those on the younger characters. I try to keep everything as smooth as possible. Okay, so very close to being able to get rid of those sketch lines. I'm just going to add some hair. Okay, so I can get rid of those, and you can see the difference. I mean, I'm not done with it, but there's the first, there's the second, and there's the third. So it's getting better and better each time. So now let's just add, I'm going to do the final details on this, and then I guess that would be done for that. I keep trying to think of some of the things that really affected me learning as an artist growing up. I remember really liking, like I said, I really liked manga, but I was also a huge Betty and Veronica fan. Sometimes you could probably see that influence on my work. If you've read Legend of Wonder Woman, which is another book that I wrote too, there's a lot of Betty and Veronica-esque type of artwork going on in terms of like when it comes to Etta Candy. You just find inspiration wherever. There's no rules in where you can find inspiration. I've known some people who might say, like, you can't be a very successful comic book artist if you only draw this way, or if you draw too cartoony. And once again, you can draw however you want, create the stories however you want, and the look. I created my own comics when I was growing up. I made a lot of very strange comics. I think my first one was actually a Sonic the Hedgehog comic. I was a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and Archie came out with his comics. And then I moved on to manga, and I did some book called Dragon Hunters about 3 girls running through the woods trying to kill these poor dragons. Never finished them, but it was great practice, and I was really passionate about those stories, and those are very important. So if you have an idea, just go for it. Just start drawing it, even if you don't finish it. Every time you do something, you're gonna learn something from it, even if it ends up being like a failed project, or maybe if you just decide to quit halfway, you're still gonna have learned something from it. Okay, so things like this, I've kind of given up trying to make it too smooth in terms of trying to make this go a little faster. So the corset, I'm just basically adding in details. Some people kind of ask me sometimes, like, you know, what made you like comic books, or what made you decide to have a career in comics? And you know, I've really thought about that because didn't really know for a long time. I loved comics growing up, but I mean, there's animation, there's video games. I love those too. And I never really quite understood for a while why I went for comics instead. And then finally I realized it's because it's the easiest way that I know of to create a full story on your own, meaning that, you know, you can write it, you can then pencil it and ink it and color it, and you have done the whole thing yourself. So you're kind of in control of the look and feel of an entire story very easily. I mean, of course you can be in control of a story when you're writing, but you know, if you're talking visual storytelling, comics I feel like is the easiest way to do that, and you know, the most cost effective. Doing an animation might take a lot more time, or you might need a team of people. And working with teams is great, but you know, sometimes you just have that story in your mind, and you know, you just want to get it out just a particular way, and that's where comics I feel like is very good, and especially now with movies and TV shows and things like that being derived from comics. You know, doing a comic book, if you have a good story in mind, is a very smart thing to do. Don't let the old traditional thing about, oh, they're just comics, you know, get to you. Comics are just as serious of a storytelling mechanism as animation or movies or anything else like that. You know, but yeah, if you have a story in mind, and maybe you don't know how to ink and color, maybe you only know how to draw, or maybe, you know, don't let that stop you. Just go for it. You don't have to be so hard on yourself if you don't get it perfect. Says me, the perfectionist. Something I got to tell myself. That was probably one of the hardest things I had to do, actually, was to just stop trying to find all the faults in what you're doing. I have a hard time actually reading, like looking at my work in other books. Like after I've finished, I sometimes just won't look at it because all I can see are the faults. And you know, a lot of that is just because I want to be the best artist I can be, and so I'm always on the lookout for those faults. But that can be very helpful, but you don't want to do it too much, and I tend to do that too much. You don't want to do it so much that you start feeling bad about what you do. Okay, I'm getting close, I promise. Okay, yeah, my lines aren't very smooth, but there you go. So, another character I would love to do for the Light Princess sometime was the Witch, and something that people don't maybe realize about me is that I love drawing monsters and, you know, creatures and, you know, witches and things like that the most. I could draw a whole book just about some scary looking old witch or a troll. A lot of people haven't, you know, hired me to draw female characters. I'm not really sure why. I guess I just draw them a way that they like, but I love drawing those witches and trolls, and there's a really good one in the Light Princess, so make sure you go check that out. Okay, well, you know, it's not perfect, but I'm gonna start adding some details a little faster in there. And see, this is where like a lot of the life starts coming into the drawing, or in the details. I kind of draw like a ruching in the line there. I would like to draw some kind of lace. I won't get into detail with the lace, but I kind of want to draw like a ruffle or something. Whoops, look at that. I didn't even finish. Whoops. Can't have a half-laced corset, my goodness. What would the king think? Let's see. And you think of things like, let's see, what did I do for the cover there? Yeah, oh, well, that one's a lot fancier than the one I just did, but we'll just do some kind of design here. And a lot of the little details that you add really, really add up. Oops, we don't need an arrow at our head, do we? Okay, just gonna refine some lines around it, and I guess that would be done. Kind of wish I was coloring this one now. That would be really fun. I'm gonna give her some dimples. I believe the character had some good dimples. But I guess that basically draws that to a close. That would be a character. Like I said, I would probably do one more layer of drawing after that, but there's a lot of work that goes into a comic book. I don't think people quite realize that. Another question I get that's pretty common is how long it takes to draw a comic book. And, you know, the rule, that varies so much. You know, you have people that can draw multiple pages a day because their style is very cartoony or very rough, you know, and that's great. They can do that. And then there's people that take days just to do one page. For me, I'm somewhere, I've kind of had to learn how to draw, I've kind of had to learn to draw quickly because I have children who I take care of, and I've had to learn to be pretty quick with what I do. Not only because they take up a large chunk of time and that leaves less time for work, but also because I'm sure that they interrupt me every 2 minutes, so you got to quickly get in what you need to do before one of them comes at you. So, but yeah, you know, if you think, and I've also gotten a lot of questions about being a mother and being a comic book artist. I don't think there are too many. I think they're coming in more number, which is great, but trying to do both things is obviously very difficult, but it's not impossible. You just need to adapt. And I think with the comic book industry and a lot of art industries, you need to be able to adapt to work on a variety of different things in a variety of different ways. And I think that's what I love about the industry the most, is that it's just surprising and people can come up with something new and different ways of doing things. But anyway, yeah, it's good enough, I suppose. And you always got to have the signature. My signature, not, you know, I could probably come up with something cooler, but I kind of just have always stuck with the same old signature that I've always had, which is kind of a scribble like that. That is my signature. I should probably work on that a little bit. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, that is the Light Princess. Thank you very much for, I guess, listening in. I hope it was somewhat entertaining, and have fun drawing. Bye.